Hey friends, welcome back to Reckless to Redeem. In today's episode, we are going to hear Lizzie's personal testimony, and I am so excited to be able to witness this with you guys and all the good works Jesus has done in her life. I just remember she was just this big party girl, and now she's a child of God, and it's just beautiful to watch. So you can go ahead and get started.
Yes, I am so excited to share everything that God has done in my life. I feel like growing up, I lived a pretty typical childhood. I had two very loving parents. They grew me up in church, and I was very respectful towards them, towards my teachers. And that seemed to have kind of shifted once I got to high school. When I was 14, it was the first time that I'd ever gotten drunk, and I got pretty belligerent, unfortunately, but I think that kind of triggered something in me that I really just loved to live that lifestyle. And soon after that is when I even started smoking weed for the first time. I was pretty open to trying really anything. And I would go hang out with one of my really good friends at the time, and pretty well every weekend we would sneak out of her house and we would go party. It just was becoming a huge issue in my life. And it was even at a point my freshman year that I actually skipped school, and my mom found out close to actually the end of the school day. And she texted me, she said, "Hey, I know you're not at school, but you need to get to school." And little did she know that I was actually wasted. It was noon, probably. I went to school, got caught probably 20 minutes after being there. The principal and the officer came in and grabbed me. The officer at our school actually breathalyzed me, and I ended up with an underage drinking charge and was also suspended from school. I had to do diversion to get it off my record. So going into my sophomore year, the partying just continued. It was pretty well every weekend that it was available. Junior year, I actually had always hung out with people much older than me, and most of my friends at that point had graduated. So I went to school the first day of my junior year, realized I didn't want to be there anymore. Came home, my parents agreed to let me do online classes, which unfortunately turned into being able to go out during the week as well. So I feel like my drinking kind of started to progress during my junior year of high school. I had a lot more freedom. And then my senior year is when everything just got really bad for me. I was going out pretty well every day. It's kind of like around the time me and Ashley met. I feel like for her and I, we would pretty well start drinking at like 7 o'clock at night, start going to a party at 10, staying out till 4, sleeping all day the next day, and doing it all over. And I feel like that lasted for a lot of months. And I really just started becoming very dependent on alcohol.
It is just so crazy, girl, whenever I think about how we would just start drinking at 7 and we were always just in these chain text messages like, "Where's the next party at?" And we would just drink for nets. And I remember my alcoholism was really bad at that time as well, and I was just shaking, and I remember telling you, like, "I'm having the shakes," and you're like, "Oh, girl, like, it's all right, you're fine, like, we're gonna go out
Drink some
tonight."
more alcohol.
Yeah, we were just those type of party girls, and it's just wild.
Well, and I feel like it just we felt important. And the thing is we weren't getting the right attention. Even though at that time we felt like, oh wow, people like us. We were not getting the attention that was good attention. I lost a lot of self-respect. I was, very lustful. You know how that was. And
Yeah.
I just felt like I had burned so many bridges with people. I didn't have a care in the world on whose feelings I was hurting. I never cared about anybody but myself. I remember always feeling so anxious, and it was simply because I really just wasn't a good person. I wasn't a good friend. I feel like you and I especially kind of were mean to people. I mean, and we just didn't care. We didn't care about hurting people's feelings. I remember my parents finally I was so anxious, and I was kind of like I loved the lifestyle we were living, but I was also just so done with living the way that we were living. And my parents had told me, "Hey, we're planning on moving to Oregon." And I remember just being so excited for a fresh start. I was like, nobody's going to know me. It's just going to be so nice. And I had so much embarrassment, I guess, living in Kentucky at that time. Like, I was running away from my problems, is what I was doing. So we moved to Oregon. For the first couple months that we lived there, we weren't quite established yet. We were waiting for our house. Once we finally got established, I got a job, and that's when I started to meet friends. And that's when the drinking started up again. I remember a few months after starting my new job, I had met a new friend and they were looking for a roommate. I was almost 18 years old and I decided I was just going to go ahead and move out. Well, that gave me even more freedom. It was the first time that I ever lived, out of my parents' house. I actually remember, like, I think the first day that I moved in, I went and bought like a case of beer because I thought it was like so cool that I could like drink at my house and relax. So my drinking started up really heavy, and I actually ended up getting in an argument with my roommate. The cops were called, and I ended up with another underage drinking charge. At that point, I kind of burned that bridge, ended up moving back in with my parents, was really depressed, really anxious, and just kind of angry with myself. Like, why is it that I get a fresh start and here I am messing it all up again? I told my parents I wanted to move back to Kentucky, and I ended up calling my grandma. She said that I could live with her. So within the next few months, I made the move back to Kentucky. That was probably one of the worst decisions I probably could have ever made in my entire life. I went back to the same stuff I was doing before. I was just drinking all the time. I was not very happy. I even started meeting guys online because I was lonely. Ashley at the time had her relationship and she had kids, and I'm kind of, what am I doing with my life? Like, I don't have anybody. I just kind of felt alone, and here I am trying to find my worth in men. I put myself in a lot of really bad situations and I think about it all the time, and I'm just so grateful to God that he protected me because there's a chance that I wouldn't be sitting here for as much as I was meeting random people. I just wasn't really like in a good headspace at that time. And actually, during that time, I hadn't seen my brother in probably 5 years, and he came out and visited us. He started talking to me about God. And I really just wasn't super absorbing anything he was saying, but he definitely instilled the fear of God in me. And I remember that stuck with me for many years. And I really truly believe that conversation is what's brought me to this point. A couple weeks after he left, I again was still living the same lifestyle that I was living. I decided to meet another random guy online and we partied, got super drunk. It was about 4 a.m. I had to work the next morning and I decided I needed to go home, that it was, I was gonna have to get up for work soon. I was driving home and ended up with a DUI. I was arrested that night. I ended up spending 4 days in jail. My parents lived in Oregon at the time. I didn't have any way to contact any of my friends. I didn't know anybody's number. This whole time, I'm thinking nobody knows that I'm in here other than my parents. I did talk to them and they had told me that they were not going to come get me out, which I think was probably one of the best things that they could do for me. I needed to sit there. And little did I know, there was actually one of my friends who had been helping my parents this entire time. They originally had no idea where I was. They were completely worried sick, thinking something had happened to them. My friend kind of explained, hey, she was going to meet this guy. They're thinking the worst situation. She was actually able to locate the fact that I was in jail and help them out. Well, my dad flew out about 3 days that I had been in jail. He did like a video conference with me and he said, listen, he said, I'm going to pack up your stuff tonight from your grandma's. I'm going to get you out tomorrow, but I need you to promise him that I will move back to Oregon. And I agreed because yet again, I was ready to run away from my problems. I didn't want to deal with my life here. I again was just, my anxiety was at an all-time high. I was just ready to get out. Ashley ended up actually coming and getting me out. I didn't even know that she knew that I was in there. I went to her house that night. I was just so ready to just be done. And I remember my dad texting me and he was like, listen, I know your friend just got you, but will you please just still come back to Oregon? And I said, yes, like I'm ready. Pick me up in the morning. Like we're out of here. I moved back to Oregon. I had, some drug and alcohol classes that I had to take because of the DUI. I did not have a license. And so mainly I just focused strictly on working. I worked as much as I could. It was like the only way I could get out of the house. I just was like almost becoming a hermit. I was scared to like be social. I didn't want to mess up again. And I was terrified. My anxiety was just so bad at that time. So I spent probably about the next year living in Oregon, and again, I was ready to get out. I didn't want to be there anymore, and I had a friend who lived about 3 hours away from our hometown in Kentucky. He was like, "Why don't you move here? It gets you kind of close to, where we're from, but you're not going to be there, so you're not going to be making the same mistakes." And I agreed, and I was really excited. So I moved down there, and I actually met my now husband shortly after I moved there. About 2 weeks after my friend and I moved into our place, I had woken up at about 4 AM. Our apartment was, like, completely underwater. I couldn't find my phone. My roommate was not there at the time. I actually had been to my now husband's house one time. He lived about an hour away. I actually drove to his house because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where my friend's boyfriend lived. And I was like, okay, he's going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to show up and just be like, hey, I need your help. And that's exactly what I did. I said, I want to take a nap and then I want to figure this out. So went to my house. He helped, get the water out. We were trying to figure out like where we were going to live. She kind of made the decision to live with her boyfriend. I was like, I don't really know what to do. And he was like, you know what? You can just come stay with me for a little while until you figure it out. Well, I ended up living there forever. I mean, we never left each other. Started feeling just depression and anxiety start to kick in. I just had never felt like I belonged anywhere, and I was really struggling with that. My now husband Dustin worked third shift, and so I was alone a lot of the time. Obviously, like my other friend, she still was about an hour away. Ashley was 3 hours away. My parents were in Oregon still. I was just really struggling. I remember I would sit at home and I would just get so wasted all by myself. I was just drowning in alcohol, really. Even Dustin was very concerned about me. He's like, "You're drinking a lot." And obviously, I got very defensive, like, leave me alone about it. I finally ended up deciding that I needed maybe a little bit of medical help. I went and got put on depression medicine. That seemed to help me for a while, but I just got to the point where I was gaining a lot of weight. I just didn't want to be on it anymore. So I ended up stopping. I was still drinking very heavily. I would constantly be making a fool out of myself. I was meeting people in his life that, I was looking ridiculous. I'm sure he was very embarrassed of me at some points. We were dating for about probably 2 years at this time. I was, kind of getting to the point where I was ready for like a commitment. He was very standoffish about that. Later, after talking to my dad about it, he kind of expressed to me that Dustin was kind of concerned about being with me, being married to me if I was going to be drinking the way that I did. He wanted to make that commitment, but he just, yeah, he wasn't sure that this is what he wanted to deal with forever. I felt like that kind of changed, something in me. Obviously, didn't give up drinking completely, but I felt like, okay, maybe I can at least get this under control. It got to the point where, yes, I was still drinking, but I felt like, oh, well, I know now how to not get drunk. Like I can just have a couple of drinks, here and there. We got married, and I feel like I was doing okay for a while. We had got to the point where we were ready to start trying to have a baby. We realized that that was not happening like it should. We started going through fertility treatments, and that lasted for about a year of on and off doing fertility treatments and progressed into having to do IVF to have our daughter. We ended up doing 2 rounds of IVF, and unfortunately, we have a little angel baby up there that did not make it. But then came our daughter. I was pregnant. I was really excited, but I was also very scared. I think my hopes got really high when I got pregnant the first time. It kind of the second time, it's almost like it was really hard for me to be excited for a long time. So then we ended up having our daughter. Doctor came in and kind of just explained to me, I was just over the moon. I loved my child. I was so excited. And she kind of just explained to me, like, hey, if you start to feel down in the next few days, this is normal. And I'm just thinking, like, okay, you're absolutely crazy. Like, there's no way that I'm going to feel this way. I remember coming home, first day was amazing. I remember my mom looking at me and the next day and she was like, "You just don't seem like yourself." And I'm like, "I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me." She was like, "No, like if you need to talk about this, like, it's okay." And in my mind, I'm thinking, I no, I'm not doing okay. But how can I say that when I've tried so hard for this child? It's like I was putting myself on this different standard than other women who have had babies, when realistically my feelings are the exact same as theirs. We all have to deal with this postpartum and it's hard. So I was just never willing to admit that I was really struggling. My mom ended up, she stayed for a couple weeks, she went home. Dustin had to go back to work. It was like once reality finally set in that, I'm here by myself, I am exhausted, I'm tired, and I was getting really depressed. I was like, God, I cried out to God. I didn't even really have a relationship with God. I would talk to him. I was very lukewarm throughout my life. Like, I would reach out to him when times were tough. That was the only time I was reaching out. And that's exactly what I was doing in this moment. I was like, I just can't do this. Like, I don't understand why I'm so depressed. I love my daughter so much, but I can't handle my emotions right now. And I said, I just need you to help me. I don't even know who you are. I mentioned this before. Like, I was telling him, like, I don't even see how people can trust you like they claim they do. I said, but I need your help. Just please help me. And I was crying my eyes out in my living room by myself. As an outsider, if you were looking in, you would think I looked ridiculous. He just comforted me and he said, "Listen, like, I'm here. I'm going to help you." And I just I finally got it. I finally understood why, people in my family, people in my life just always told me to talk to God. And it was like it just clicked. It finally clicked. I'm like, he cares. He truly cares about me. I still drank. If we could have a babysitter sometimes, like, I, would take advantage of that and we drink, but I never let myself get drunk. That was just the standard that I was setting for myself. If you want to have a drink, you're not getting drunk. It wasn't until Ashley's bachelorette party that I realized I had an issue, and it didn't matter how long I had gone without getting drunk. You put yourself in a bad situation, you're gonna unfortunately, the enemy takes over, and that's exactly what happened. I remember, just taking shots. I'm like, "This is my best friend's bachelorette party, like,
Right.
one last hurrah for me, and it's not even my wedding,"
Mhm.
I
Yes.
didn't plan on getting the way that I did. Got, separated from everybody. And I remember trying to text my husband, couldn't see my phone. Literally, I'm coherent enough to understand that I can't even see the words that I'm texting my husband. I just remember going, leaving this bar, going outside and saying, I need to go home. Like, I need to go home. And I knew that I messed up. I messed up. I woke up the next day. I was so disappointed in myself. And I was like, why did you let this happen? I hadn't gotten like that for such a long period of time. The next night that we went out, I had decided I was, you know what, I'm just gonna drink water. Everybody's partying, but I can't do this again. Because I still was not ready to say that I was done drinking. Like that, I couldn't do it. And I'm like, well, as long as I'm in the right setting, it's okay. If I just have a glass of wine every once in a while, it's okay. But I kept feeling God convicting me. Like, I did. I truly felt him saying, like, "Lizzie, like, alcohol has completely destroyed your life. Like, no matter what, it has destroyed your life. There are people that can handle it, but you are not one. Like, straight up, you are not one." I just kept saying, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine." I kept testing the waters, over and over. Finally, I literally remember just sitting in my daughter's room. I was like, "I'm done. Like, I'm literally done. I don't wanna do this anymore. I don't wanna let this control me anymore. I don't care if it's 1 glass a year. I don't want any of it. I wanna be done. I wanna finally get to the point in my life that I can say, 'I'm done drinking alcohol,' and I can confidently say that." Immediately at that point, I called Ashley, I texted a few other friends, I called my parents, and I said, "Listen, I'm texting you this for accountability because I'm done." And it's crazy to me because he has completely taken the desire from me. Like, it's insane. When I finally got to the point where I decided I was gonna be obedient to what God was wanting me to do, he made it so easy for me. I spent, what, 13, 14 years of my life drinking. I mean, alcohol was my top priority. Getting that fun fix was my top priority. And I know, and this is why, this is like why we have this, because if I could have changed on my own, I promise you the amount of anxiety and depression that I was dealing with, I would have made that choice. But the fact is I couldn't do it without God. And so it didn't happen until I decided that I wanted God to be number 1 in my life. And he helped me. He walked me on that path of like, "Okay, let's get you out of the darkness. Let's walk you towards the light." It's just absolutely incredible and can just completely restore your life, restore your desires, what you want in life. I mean, I never had any purpose. I never knew what I wanted to do with my life. And now I'm just like, I know what I want to do. I want to bring people to Christ. I mean, truly, I feel like that is what God has called me to do. He's like, "Hey, I know you have felt ashamed of the things that you've done, but let's use this for good." I'm no longer ashamed of it. I'm actually, I'm happy and proud of myself to see, where I was and where I am now. And I can use this story to help people because it's hard. Life is hard. Living in for this world is hard, but God redeems the brokenhearted and brings them back to life.
Wow, Lizzie, that testimony was just incredible to be able to see what Christ truly has done and living with anxiety and depression and all the things that you went through and knowing that reaching out to God, our Father, the one who created you wonderfully and beautifully made, can just bring us back to life. I just love what you said when you just surrender it all to Him. It's beautiful, and you have been through so many trials and tribulations at such a young age. I'm just so proud of what you have done in this faith journey and that your heart has truly changed since you gave everything to Christ. I'm very honored to be your best friend. You have really brought me so much sense of peace and just knowing that we're in this together and we're going to grow
Mhm.
together as long as we put Christ in the center. And that's what we plan on doing with this platform and making sure that
Yeah.
other people know that they are not alone. I hope this brings some friends, to kind of question maybe their party lifestyle, the way that they're going, because it's hard when you live with this anxious feeling for so long and you can't pinpoint where it's coming from. Y'all, it is coming from the enemy. And that's what the
Mhm.
enemy's going to do. And I'm just so grateful that God has brought us out of that and to the light. And now we're able to just share the goodness with you all. So we cannot wait for you guys to tune into the next episode. And we are going to be talking more about mental health and what Jesus has done to help us get through those hard times and those hard tribulations. Because this life is hard and we really need Jesus to get through it.
Yes, amen. We will see you guys next Wednesday.
So excited.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love you.